Does this deserve its own video? I don't know, I think you can make the argument, but then again, it's in a gray area, so I feel kinda bad for making this one, to be honest, but realistically, in yesterday's Vancouver Canucks update that we had with Elias Pettersson, Patrick Allvin, and Jonathan Lekkerimäki as our subjects, we did briefly talk about the same stuff that I wanted to be talking about in this video. It's just, there were a few extra comments that kind of went under the radar, and I didn't really expand too much on these in yesterday's video, so I wanted to do it all over again. Just because when it comes to the updates to the Canucks and their signings, yeah, we do have some things to talk about, and I think when it comes to some of these dollar amounts and expectations that have been tossed around, there are some interesting things to bring up here. So, we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks and talking about some of their pending UFAs and RFAs and whether or not they're going to re-sign. We're talking about Elias Lindholm, and we are also talking about Filip Hronek. Now, we have had a few conversations over the past few weeks regarding these two guys. For Lindholm, it was, there isn't really a consensus saying that he wants to sign with the Canucks, and for Filip Hronek, there was this conversation saying that he rejected a $6-point-something million AAV deal by 8 years from the Canucks, and there were conversations as to whether or not that was alarming. But here, we have ourselves some more to go through when it comes to both of these guys. So let's start out with Lindholm, because as we had talked about in yesterday's video, there was a Patrick Allvin comment made on The Athletic to Pierre LeBrun. Now, the article is going to be linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read it. It's all the same thing that we had talked about from yesterday. Canucks GM Patrick Allvin on the quiet deadline, signing Pettersson plus Lindholm, Demko, and more. Instead of screenshotting that, though, because The Athletic is paid for material, we're going over onto hockeylatest.com because Vancouver Canucks GM comments on the future of Elias Lindholm pretty much has the same quotes that we need from Allvin. Initially, when we traded for Lindholm, I talked to his camp and said our intention was to sign him, Allvin said, but obviously it's got to work for both sides. We'll see. I think it's been a little bit of an adjustment time for him, and in fairness, the whole team hasn't played great. We knew we were going to have a tough February schedule workload-wise. It was heavy, and we got out of it with a .500 record, which is the reason we're still sitting at the top, I think. But as I said earlier, we've got guys who haven't played in important games in March. And we didn't talk about this much in yesterday's video, but I wanted to expand more so on that idea that Allvin tossed out there saying, hey, it's been kind of an adjustment period for Lindholm. He's needed a little bit of extra time here, and maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, but it is intriguing to note that even the GM is going out there and saying, yeah, essentially he hasn't been his best. We recognize that there is a talented player here, but when it comes to what we have gotten out of him, hey, he really needs to improve. He's been focusing so much on his defensive coverage and being the first guy back and winning all these face-offs and everything that it's almost like the offensive side of his game has completely disappeared. Elias Lindholm, if you go over to his profile for Vancouver in this season's worth of play, 7 points in 19 games, which really is not much when you consider that he had 82 points in 82 games just 2 seasons ago. And to think, this guy apparently wants $8 million a year, like, I don't know, man. If Lindholm goes to the free agent market, I don't know if he even gets that anymore. Like, sure, if you could have negotiated this at the beginning of, let's say, this season, or at the end of last season, he had 64 points in 80 games after Gaudreau and Tkachuk left, you could have been like, okay, there's reason to believe that he's worth that. But, like, I don't know, man. Even now, if he goes to the market, does he get $8 million a year? I know he's, like, young enough. He'll be a free agent at 29 years old, which is prime territory for a team to overpay for a guy who's quote-unquote in his prime, but like, I really don't know, especially since Allvin mentioned it now that, yeah, of course our intention is to re-sign him. We didn't trade for him with the idea that he'd just walk, but now after evaluating their options and evaluating his play, it's like, yeah, he hasn't really been playing his best. So for Allvin to admit that straight up, I don't think I made as big of a deal about that idea yesterday than I should have. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to what you think Elias Lindholm's future will look like with the Vancouver Canucks. Does he actually stick around? Now, there also is a conversation that we can have in regards regards to Filip Hronek, the defenseman, because last time we had talked about him, we had the conversation as to how apparently he rejected a huge contract extension from Patrik Allvin and the Canucks, and apparently him and his party were not really all too happy with receiving a $6-point-something million AAV contract amount because they kind of want something in the $8 million range. And as we had said in that last video, Quinn Hughes is making 7 point whatever. If you're making 8, you're making more than Quinn. If you're making 8, you're making the same as JT Miller. JT Miller is a 100-point caliber guy. Does Filip Hronek deserve to be making that money? You could very well say probably not. You could also very well say that Hronek could be a product of Quinn Hughes if he was playing with Ian Cole or Carson Soucy the entire year. Does he have the amount of points that he's got this season? I mean, Hronek is on pace for 54 points in 82 games played, which is definitely not bad. He's one of the top scoring defensemen in the NHL this year. But is that $8 million a year worthy? Who really knows? I get it, the guy is 26 years old, so you'd probably like to lock him down to an 8-year contract since he will be in those prime years, but Elliotte Friedman's recent comments on the Donnie and Dolly show went out there and illuminated where these conversations could really go. Take a look at this. I think there is a deal to be made, and the sweet spot could be in the $7.5 million range. If Filip Hronek is dead set to go above 7.5, it could cause you problems. And if you go over and listen to the clip, I mean, Friedman pretty much says similar things that, hey, they got a Pettersson deal done. They wanted that to happen. He wanted it to happen. They were able to agree. If Filip Hronek wants to stay in Vancouver and the Vancouver Canucks want to keep Hronek around, there's more likely a chance that they agree on a deal rather than walk away and trade Hronek or let him get signed to an offer sheet or whatever. If he is so dead set on a number above 7.5, though, then you might have a problem. And to that, I say, yeah, of course we'll have a problem. As we had just said, Quinn Hughes is making 7.8, so if you want $8 million a year, you can't be making more than Quinn Hughes. I'm sorry, you just can't. Percentage of the cap, whatever, I get there's an argument to be made there. I get that the cap is going up, but for Filip Hronek, I mean, is he worth $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 more a year than the captain of the team in Quinn Hughes, who is one of the best offensive defensemen in the NHL? Like, you could say that Quinn Hughes' contract is a bargain right now. He's playing at maybe a $10 million AAV caliber. If Elias Pettersson is making 11 point whatever and Quinn's making 7.8, yeah, there's a discrepancy there. But on the contrary, you could say that because Quinn Hughes is at 7.8, that could be defined as the ceiling. It's the old Nick Lidstrom rule. You don't make more money than Lidstrom. Sorry, if you want more, you're gonna have to leave. And for Filip Hronek, unfortunately, the Canucks, I don't know if they have that, like, stop-loss available to them, if they have that sternness available to their repertoire here in negotiation, but at the end of the day, Elliotte Friedman's right. If the Canucks want it to happen, if Hronek wants it to happen, if he really wants to stay here, then yeah, we'll probably see something get done. And if it's in that $7.5 million range, for me personally, I don't really like the idea of seeing Hronek make more money than Boeser by $1 million, but at the same time, you know, you have to understand when these contracts are signed. Brock Boeser signed his extension a while ago. Hronek is signing his this year. So there is some cap shenanigans to go through with it. And Brock's contract is expiring in 2025. So there will be some renegotiations there. Quinn Hughes is on the books till 2027. So there's going to be a ways to go before he gets any sort of a bigger extension in the $11 million AAV range. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to the Elias Lindholm conversation, how Patrik Allvin wanted to get this done earlier, but how now there has been a little bit of a setback, and the setback is that he's just not been playing too well. And what are your thoughts on Filip Hronek potentially being in that $7.5 million AAV sweet spot? If the Canucks sign Hronek for anything under 7.5, honestly, at this point, while it's not preferred, I think I'm happy with it. Like, after hearing that he was so displeased, apparently, with a $6.6 million AAV offer, which would have been the same as Boeser, I mean, where else is it that you can go here? If the guy wants 8, you're gonna have to find a compromise, and that compromise is not gonna be giving him that money that he wants. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Filip Hronek and Elias Lindholm, plus the Vancouver Canucks and their negotiating strength here. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.